Hey, welcome back to another video. Now today, the reason Europeans erased African history. Let's get it. Let's go. No time to waste.
Why has the history of African peoples been erased? Well, we don't live in a fair world. Things aren't fair. You don't get equal opportunities. You get the opportunities that you create for yourself. And if someone gets in there first and they conquer you, they colonize you, they enslave you, they simply make your history disappear to make it look like they conquered, colonized, and enslaved nobodies. When people have a history, that makes you a somebody. So if you remove the history, you become nobody. And so, your history disappearing, nobody's lamenting the loss of that history. That's why conquerors, colonizers, and enslavers make the people whose history they've conquered, colonized, and enslaved disappear. There are psychological reasons why people would want to associate themselves with a history. There is a link between what someone thinks of themselves, what someone thinks of their people, and their history. Now, scholars talk about personal esteem, that means self-esteem, and then you have interpersonal or group esteem, which is what you think of your group or what you think of your race, racial esteem. Self-esteem and racial esteem are not the same thing. Someone can have very high self-esteem where they think highly of themselves and very low racial esteem where they think very badly of other black people. And in truth, most black people have very high self-esteem and very low racial esteem. And that's one of the reasons why black people are prone to fight each other, prone to disagree with each other, prone to conflict with each other, because someone thinks very highly of themselves and someone thinks very lowly of their group. And what happens is, if people can call each other the N and the B words, they're really saying, I don't give a monkey's about the black race. They've really just said that their racial esteem is very, very low. But every black person usually has very high personal esteem. So if someone thinks highly of themselves and very lowly of their group, that is a recipe for fighting. That is a recipe for conflict. And the way to raise people's racial esteem is to introduce them to their history. And if the history happens to be a great history, a history that people objectively can be proud of, they will see their people in a very different way to how they see their people at present. And that's the difference between high self-esteem, low racial esteem, to having a balance where you have high self-esteem and high racial or ethnic esteem. The purpose of my work generally is to build that psychological balance between high personal esteem and high self-esteem.
Okay. For those of you who don't know what a Pan-African is, these are very pro-African people. It started from Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey wanted to basically create the African diaspora, bring it all back together. Like take every black person from Western society, everywhere all over the planet, and bring them back to Africa, right? And one African consciousness, and then Malcolm X kind of went a little further with it. Like I technically take Malcolm as a Pan-Africanist too, even though I don't know if he would be considered a Pan-Africanist because he was a Muslim, but I think maybe Muslims can be Pan-African to a degree. I don't know. I think they can. I'm trying to balance that out. But anyways, he drives a good point, right? So black people have a racial self-esteem that's low. He probably knows this, but I want to actually say the reason why. It is history. It's history, and within the history, there's more to it, right? when the Portuguese came in I think the 14th century, right around there. Like, you know, you guys can research everything I'm saying, what I'm about to tell you. But when the Portuguese came over in the 14th century, they created the concept for race, right? And race, darker skin was always going to be considered inferior. So the longer that we consider race a part of society, the inferior complex will always exist amongst darker people, because that's what it was created to make seem. It was created to balance out that difference. And the darker your skin was, to point out the difference, that the darker your skin was, the more unattractive, the more stupid, the more whatever, you know, they come up with, right? And as the generations went on, they started finding more, they're not finding, but they started expanding on this concept, right? To where the point where you get eugenics and you get many of the racist biological scientists of the time, biologists and scientists of the time, that were coming up with all these pseudo theories for the brain and how Africans think and how black people are naturally stupid and all these specific things, that our brains are smaller. I saw that one time. To the point to where actually, like, it's balancing on them. It's reflecting back on them, because one thing that they did find was that the first body was found in Africa, right? They also found that when the African gene is mixed with the white gene, it erases the white gene. So when you get a black gene mixed with a white gene, it's gone. Like, it's completely gone. But also that black people were the mothers and fathers of civilization. Like, every group of people that exists on the planet came out of Africa, right? Came out of those original mothers, blacks, right? Which led to people like the Hebrew Israelites being born, or even the Nation of Islam and their theories about white people and what they think about it. But there's so much in the history. There's a book I'm reading right now. It's called Destruction of a Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams. I love this book. I was just actually talking to Mama Bear about this. We were talking about the bastard in history, like the mulatto problem and things like that. But the most interesting thing he said in that book was that until racism doesn't exist anymore, whites and blacks could never see eye to eye on anything, right? And if you think about it, racism has only existed for 600 years. If you really think about it, because the Portuguese came up with the concept in the 14th century. Ever since the 14th century, prior to that, everything was based on nationality. If you were born in Rome and you were black, you were considered a Roman, point blank period. If you were born in Africa and you were what we consider white today, you would be considered an African. You see what I'm saying? It's why there's so much confusion with who were the original people of Egypt, right? There's so much confusion because back then, whether you were white or black, you were considered an Egyptian. If you were born in Egypt, you were considered an Egyptian. And there were many invasions in Egypt, and not just invasions, but it was a sea coastal city. So many groups of people came in. I do believe the original people that were there were the Nubians, and I do believe that they were not, well, yeah, I think there were the Nubians, and I think there were black people that were originally the people of Egypt. But it's still a sea. Anyways. Saying all that to say, there's so much that ties into the black inferiority complex, and it does lead to us calling each other the N-word and the B-word, and to this day, so much conflict amongst the groups, amongst us, and it sucks, man. And you can also see where things were erased and things were written over and all kind of stuff like this. There's a good book. It was a Russian book I was reading one time where it shows how often like white people would come and mark over things and color over things. And even like technically if Jesus existed, he walked through Palestine. So he had to have been a darker skinned complexion to walk through that region. He definitely wasn't white, you know, but so much to it, you know. But anyway, y'all, I'm out. Peace.